Hi everyone, and thank you for following me here on my channel. If you didn't already know, I run an online philosophy academy and have been doing so for 6 years. It's called the Halcyon Academy, and so far we've had nearly, I think, 1,000 students already taking part in our courses, either in self-study mode or in with seminars. Now, currently, I just want to point out that we have a January sale. So to begin the year, right, perhaps you'd like to read a couple of books this year, and perhaps some of our courses will be good guidance, because I think it's necessary to have some guidance with these philosophical works. I'm going to go through some of the main courses that we have, and if you use the coupon code Kairos and seize the moment, the Kairos, then you get 25% off any course. So that means if you buy one course, 25%, if you buy two, 25%, so that actually reduces the cost quite a bit. And of course, you have to think of this as a honorarium for the lecturer. That would be me and also others. And it allows me to keep the lights on here and continue the work on this channel, where I try to publish videos once a week, and also point you perhaps to things you didn't know already, etc. And it also introduces certain books that are not widely available and other such things. So let me perhaps just walk through a couple of different courses that we have. For example, Plato's Politeia. You can see here behind me the Plato Gesamtausgabe, which is holds the Greek text, the original text, and also the German translation, mostly by Schleiermacher and a few others. You see behind me, this is mostly Aristotle, also a few other works here. And so what I did for the Plato course on the Politeia, or the so-called Republic, is that I flew to Athens and recorded 10 lectures in Athens and in Delphi, actually, on the Politeia, and did also consider quite substantially the ancient Greek, and tried to provide, at least for some of the fundamental terms used by Plato, translations that are perhaps uncommon or unusual. Certainly, I wouldn't claim that that they are the only ones that are appropriate, but in a way, it's not so much about translating it correctly, but it's about trying to make sense of what Plato, or Aristotle for that matter, is actually saying, or how we could say what he's trying to say in our language today. And so what the course does when you sign up for it is that we go through every single book and focus in on the most important aspects. So there will be there will be the lectures recorded in Athens, but there's also the lectures recorded as introductory lectures during the seminars that we held 2 years ago. And so what the course does is it walks you through the most important aspects of every single book. Of course, given the length of the book, etc., you have to leave certain things out, but there will be more than just a scaffolding to help you read the text on your own. So the idea is you read the book first. Let's say you read book 1 of the Politeia, then you listen to the lecture, you take your own notes, and after you've done this, you've already you're on the way to what the text is trying to tell us. What the text is trying to tell us is how cosmos, the micro and the macrocosmos are connected, how the polis has to be a mirror, as it were, of the cosmic order. And so there's a continuous double movement of anabasis and katabasis. The first word of the Politeia is kateben, I walked down, and of course also the cave, walking down into the cave, is a specific moment in this movement of walking down. So, and ultimately this upwards movement to ananke, to the spindle of necessity, at the very end of the book, and of the rebirth of the soul, that's where the work culminates. And hence we should read this not only as a work of political philosophy, but really as a work of, if you like, metaphysics, but also of, in some sense, cosmology, and what the task of the polis is. So we're going into all the different important notions. So I mentioned, we could, if you just want to use the ordinary terms, theory of forms, the noble lie, which is a mistranslation. I think I don't think that Plato necessarily advocates for a noble lie per se. We go into his cycles, his cycle of history, and of course the cave, the different analogies, analogy of the line, of the sun, of the cave. The cave really being a myth. We also consider Plato as a myth maker, etc. So this would be Plato's Politeia. Then perhaps I should mention, as I mentioned before, Aristotle, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. I wrote a book on the Nicomachean Ethics, which is this one here, the Oidaimonia, which I understand as the familiarity of the world. And in the Nicomachean Ethics, what we find is that it's not so much only a book on, how you can become virtuous if you apply certain, forms, certain habits, etc. That's all there, but it also has, again, a divine purpose. The divine purpose is to be able to see in theoria, to take the whole into consideration so that the polis may form. And there is also a certain upwards and downwards movement. It's different from Plato to a certain extent. And the course really goes into this and why, where certain different virtues stem. And we don't just discuss the virtues, as it were. I understand arete not so much as virtue, but as a coming together or a self-unification within oneself. And so the book takes you a bit further. The course, I think, takes us a bit further than perhaps a standard course on the matter would give you, because scholars in the 20th century, in the second half of the 20th century, for whatever reason, started claiming, in America, for example, that the 10th book of the Nicomachean Ethics is totally divided from the rest of the work. And that simply isn't the case. If you know how to read the work, it's simply the culmination of what has been said thus far in the 9 previous books. So I highly recommend this book, this course also to anyone interested in a Greek philosophy. One needs a good, sound foundation in Greek philosophy before you go anywhere else. So again, use the coupon code Kairos for 25% off, only until the end of January. And now let's leap ahead. Let's go to Martin Heidegger's Being in Time. Now, Being in Time is not a work of existential philosophy or existentialism. It is, in fact, an attempt to bring together a sort of a methexis, a participation of antiquity and modernity. And the title itself, Being in Time, and Heidegger's his own references at the very beginning, straight to Plato and to Aristotle, is the question of how being as presence requires time to be thought properly. And hence, everything hinges on how we think time. Heidegger makes this very explicit right from the beginning, and so do I in the course. There are more than, I think, 10 lectures. It goes deep into Heidegger's Being in Time. It's really quite a substantial course that will guide you through not just what Heidegger is saying, but also what Heidegger is referring to, which so often Heidegger scholars don't really pick up on. Heidegger, from the very beginning, ties the entire project to Plato and Aristotle, and of course, the Greeks, more broadly speaking. Let's not forget that Heidegger does quote at the very beginning from Plato's Sophist that there is a gigantic battle for the meaning of being, which continues to rage. And hence, time doesn't just, as some people assume, fly in at the end in section 65. Time is of the essence, is mentioned right in the beginning. We could even say that there's not so much a Seinsvergessenheit, an oblivion or forgetting of being, but rather a forgetting of time, as I've argued in my book on Heidegger, which you can see here, this blue one here, this published by Springer. So this would be a course on Heidegger. Again, there will be plenty of references to Plato, Aristotle, and other thinkers that Heidegger refers to. So it's not only on Heidegger, it actually is a course on the history of philosophy as well, if you like. And perhaps a final course I'd like to mention is the intellectual life, reimagined for the 21st century. Now, you're watching a video on YouTube right now, and you may have stumbled into this channel, God knows how, and how the algorithm, the almighty algorithm, the almighty algorithm fulfills itself in many ways. We just don't know how or why you're here. Maybe you found me on some other social media channel, etc. And there's a likelihood that there's a chance that you sense some sort of scatteredness, perhaps because you're listening to too many podcasts or too many videos, or and so what the course intends to do is it intends to grant you guidance on how to focus and lead a fulfilling intellectual life in the hyper-digital age in which we now live, inevitably. So it provides you not with tools and things, this is bum, 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 this is what you have to do, but no. And I've heard this from people who are, who've done the course, that it's helped them find focus in your own work, in the media that you use, either to publish your work or to just note down your work, and also how you even deal or address or the digital. And so the course, we look at Socrates, of course, and Goethe and Schelling and many, many others, Schiller, for example, as well, if you're interested in Schiller. So Schiller's sense of play is crucial here, I think. Schelling's motto that we learn only in order to create, this is what learning means, really. This should be the leitmotif of the course, should become perhaps also your leitmotif, your guiding thought in anything you do. That you don't listen to anything, even such a video such as this, as only consumption. So I'd highly encourage you to take, if you're entirely new to philosophy, I actually would encourage you to take the intellectual life course first, which will help you branch out to other courses, such as Plato's Politeia. And one question I often get asked is, where do you begin with philosophy? Now, what I'd always say is you have to begin with the Greeks. If you begin, let's say, with Heidegger, because it speaks to you more, because Heidegger talks about death without a beyond, and death in a very finite, immanent sense, and because he is a thinker of this age, then yes, do begin with Heidegger, but never forget that if you do, you need some guidance finding out what the reference points are that he has. If you don't have those reference points, you end up like, unfortunately, Hubert Dreyfus and all the others that he has produced. There are 0 reference points that Dreyfus has, who was a Heidegger writer, commentator of the last century, and didn't know what he was doing. And none of his students know. So, you could name names, but that doesn't matter, because they lack the reference points. And if you lack the reference points, you will just drown in this work. So you need that. But then again, how do you begin with philosophy? Is how you begin how to learn how to swim. You make the leap, you jump, and you get wet. You try not to drown, but you do need some guidance with it, I think. So again, head over to the website linked in the description of this video. Use the coupon code Kairos and seize the moment. See you sort of very soon. Thank you very much for listening.